Good morning, Rabbi Isai. A good Chodesh, Rabbi Isai. Leilu Nishma Simi, Ruz Bas Mordechai. How's YouTube? It's good?
Yeah, YouTube's good.
How's Zoom? Better?
Zoom is
Okay. Today's daf is sponsored by Shmuel Eliwat. In honor of his sister and her name change, I guess they went to Reb Chaim or something. Tzila.
What was the shiva?
I don't know. She's a smart, well-educated, beautiful, and successful woman, not observant, who grew up in a non-observant home, yet has always been committed to only dating Yidden. May her name change be a segula to find a mensch of a husband. L'maisa tachlis, if she finds somebody that's half as good as Shmuel himself, Shmuel is the mensch. Shmuel is the guy that we once spoke about, somebody in Beitar that needed internet. Within an hour, he got in his car, drove there, got the guy all set up with a. Remember that story?
Yeah.
So here, Shmuel Eliwat is what? What'd you say? Nochmal? Can't hear. Kiyat Sefer. Yeah, Kiyat Sefer. Sorry, Beitar Kiyat Sefer. Rabbi Isai, it works. It works. You have to give the carrot. You can't do the stick anymore. It doesn't work. So I spoke to our friend Yoel, and he said if I give him an incentive, he'll behave during share. And Friday, he only interrupted twice. One was L'tzarech, one was Shaloi L'tzarech. And I got voted, they decided Shaloi, they're both L'tzarech. So even though it was like a half hour before Shabbos, we took him to 7-Eleven.
Wow.
He's here now. On the way to 7-Eleven, he tells me, come here, Yoel, you want to tell everybody what you told me? About the 2 minutes? Could I tell everybody? I could tell everybody. He says, I wanted to see if you'd get mad at me. So I unmuted myself for 2 minutes, and you didn't catch on. For 2 minutes, you didn't catch on. It's like, what is this? He goes, I like to make trouble. But this is not cheder, Yoel. This is an adult cheer. So this is what he tells me.
That's like the shiva story.
So anyway, so that's it. We don't have time for any emails. I will tell you this. I got to tell you real quickly because I'm in Chicago, and so my friend comes over and he says, "No, so did you go to Charlotte's like 20 times?" I said, "Yeah, today I went to Charlotte's in the afternoon, then I went in the evening. This is already like my 8th time. I'm getting sick of it." He's like, I do want to remind you the story that you told me, which is that when I went out with my wife, the first time we went to a restaurant, so the guy gives us a menu, like, what is this? Like, why is there a whole list of food here? And she had explained to me what this whole restaurant thing is, and when the guy came, because I have never been to a restaurant until I was 20 years old. Been to a pizza shop once before Pesach every year. Maisa Shahaya. So he says, you should stop talking about Shalom so much, you shaita. You just started going to restaurants the other day. Well, like, who are you? Say, okay, thank you, Yitzi Weiss. Unbelievable good friend, but he had to put me in my place. Okay. Yo, I am a little thirsty. I did run home and I came back within 2.5 minutes. All right, so our boys' side today is Rosh Chodesh, and we're starting Daf Ayin. It's a brand new Masechta. If you're just joining us today, if it's your first day, it's an amazing time to start Daf Yomi. It doesn't matter where we are, in the middle of a sugya, not in the middle of a sugya. We just started a Mishnah. We'll actually go back to it a little bit. And we are holding 5 lines from the bottom of Samach Tes Amud Beis. Hoyu shnayim oisrim zel zeh. So if there are 2 people within the Chotzer, somebody's unmuted. It's probably Gary, but I don't know. Does anybody see Shui Davis on? I told him he has to be the first 50, otherwise I won't see him. But anybody? I'm not going screen to screen now. Avi, do you see Shui? Anywhere? It's these guys that make you sugar to get the link and then they don't come on. All right. Pshita. So let's go back to the Mishnah for a second. Look at the Mishnah. So one guy in the Chatzar, as we know throughout the Masechta, if there's any one person that's not part of the Eruv, he ruins it for everybody. And he did a bittul, because otherwise it's no good. So basically, also malachas, you can't use his house, their house. You can't take from him to outside and from outside into him. Now, it says, Nasnu loy rishusan, if they're mevatel to him, Hu mutar vein asur. Now, hayu shnayim, what if two people forgot to do an Eruv? Two people. State in Mishnah, oisim zelzeh. So the question is, Pshita. You ask the Gemara, what's going on here? If there are two people in a chutzner, anytime there's Reuven and Shimon in one chutzner, so they ruin it for each other. Forget about the other people that are involved. Two people in a chutzner that didn't do an Eruv, let's say there's nobody else in the world, just them two, they're also usher. They can't carry in the chutzner because all you need is one other person besides yourself to make the chutzner usher. Lo yitzricha, says the Gemara, the hadar chad minayu ubatel lei lechavrei. What happened was, in return, one of the guys went ahead and he said, my chutzner is batel to you. Now there's only one person left without an Eruv. And he was mevatel to the other guy. Mao, the same lishtri. So I would think it should be okay. Why? Just like when you have 5 people in one chutzner, they could all be mevatel one by one to the one person that didn't make an Eruv. 5 people could be mevatel. So I think over here also, everybody was mevatel to one person. At the end of the day, there's only one person left standing. Kamash malon, kivin de beidna de batel lo yhavele shur yusa by chutzner. They were mevatel, the entire chutzner were mevatel to 2 people. From those 2 people, one guy went and was mevatel to the last guy. If the whole chutzner was mevatel to one person, great. But they were mevatel to 2 people. At that point, when they were mevatel to 2 people, each one is answering on the other one. So now it's too late for one of the 2 to be mevatel to himself, to his friend. 2 lines from the bottom. She'echad noisim rishus. One person could be mevatel hasulamali. We already said in the beginning of the Mishnah, Yimedayik from the beginning of the Mishnah, that one could be mevatel. Inoisin tanina, we learned it. Inoitel tanina. And the fact that one person could be the receiver, that you could be mevatel to him, everybody could relinquish to one person, also meduyik in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, you're right. I don't need to say it again. Say if it's richalei, I need the last part. Shnayim noisnim rishus. 2 people have the ability to relinquish. Honami pshita, why not? Mao the same maligzar dilma asi levatuli lahu. Maybe you'll come, one guy will be mevatel to those 2. The fact that 2 people could relinquish the rishus, not a problem. You're right. But I would think that once you're allowing 2 people to do something, maybe you could do it to them. And we just said a second ago, you can't be mevatel to 2 people. Kamash malon, that 2 people could be mevatel, and we're not concerned that you will be mevatel to the 2 people. Ve'ein noitlin rishus. Top of Ayin Amud Aleph. Ve'ein noitlin rishus. So the 2 people cannot, you can't be mevatel to them. Lomali. We already learned this. They answer on each other. Lo yitzricha. Afagav da amrilei. Kinei almanas lachnis. What if the people in the chutzner, they give over their rishus on condition that he turns around and gives it away? It's not good enough. So we're starting a brand new sugi, Rabbi. It's a brand new, and this is going to take us down to the bottom of the page. Very geshmak stuff. Very simple and geshmak. So Abaya asks Rabbah. No, we just had the whole story. Abaya and Rabbah are in one mavi. We just learned about it. They lived together, and Rabbah had a lot of talmidim, and Abaya was busy learning all day. So now we know Abaya and Rabbah. So Abaya asks Rabbah, Kasha, Chamisha sheshruim b'chotzer achas, v'shochach echad mem v'lo yerev. One of the 5 people didn't make an eruv, kishehu mevater rishusoi, when he relinquishes his rishus, he's mevater rishus to the others, tzarich levater kol echad ve'echad oiloi. Sort of like this picture, but not really. You have one against everybody. Does he have to tell each and every one, mevutalach, 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 or he just does it to one and that's it? So in fact, we have a machlokes. Sorry. Tzarich levater kol echad ve'echad oiloi, omerlei, tzarich levater kol echad ve'echad. So Rabbah is of the opinion that you have to be mevatel to each and every person. Eisvei. Echad shaloi irev noisim l'rishusai. So now I'm going to show you something very, very simple. We're going to have 7 cases. And we're going through the 7 cases. They're very, very simple. But I made it even simpler. Here we go. The first 4 cases are good. The way this chart works, red is a guy that didn't make an eruv. Green is a guy that made an eruv. This Arrow is who's mevatel to who. So, case number one is a guy that didn't make an Eruv, did not make an Eruv. He's mevatel his rishos to a guy that made an Eruv. That's okay. Check. Now, we don't even need all 7 cases. The raya that Abaya has is from this one case, from this right here. Why? Because if you think about it, he made an Eruv. Gri made an Eruv. With who? With who? You can't make an Eruv with yourself. So he made an Eruv with another guy. So in fact, this case, there's a second guy here. And it says that he was mevatel rishus to one person out of the 2. Isn't that a beautiful raya? That's why Abaya argues with Rabbah. Even though Rabbah, we just learned who Rabbah is compared to Abaya. He argues with him. So Nachamol, this case, obviously, there's a second guy, because there's an Eruv. An Eruv means 2 people. And it's not him, it's not Mr. Red. And Red could be mevatel rishus to one guy. Great. That's the end of the raya. Okay, but now we have to go through the whole brisa, and it's good that we're going through the whole brisa, because the Gemara explains why we need each case, what's a chap in each and every case. Okay, so case number 1 is that this guy didn't make an Eruv, even mevatel rishus to him. Okay. 2 people that did, now if you look over here, I'll stop cheat. Here's the case where it's no good. A guy that made an Eruv and was mevatel rishus to somebody that didn't make an Eruv, X, it's no good. They're the opposite cases. Okay. Let's go weiter. 2 people that made an Eruv. Yoel's raising his hand. Yeah?
So why do
It doesn't count because he raised his hand.
why
Yeah?
do you need 7 takes it, I'd say 1 does.
Very good cash. He's asking why do you need all 7 cases? Because each case has a special chidush, not for Abaya. Abaya only needs 1 case. But once the Gemara mentions it, we're going to talk about everything. He's halting cup. So, 2 people that made an Eruv could be mevatel their rishus completely to somebody that never made an Eruv. 2 people that didn't make an Eruv could be mevatel the rishus to 2 people that did make an Eruv. And 2 people that didn't make an Eruv could be mevatel the rishus to a person that didn't make an Eruv. This case is similar. 2 people that didn't make an Eruv to 1 person that didn't, 2 people that didn't make an Eruv to 1 person that didn't. And now real quickly, the 3 cases that you cannot do. No, bittul doesn't work here. A guy that made an Eruv cannot be mevatel rishus to somebody that didn't make an Eruv. Gary, stop paying so much attention today. What's going on here? And 2 guys that made an Eruv cannot be mevatel the rishus to 2 people that didn't make an Eruv. I don't expect anybody to memorize this balpeh. And 2 people that didn't make an Eruv should not be mevatel the rishus. The 2 people that didn't make an Eruv, the Gemara says, this pshit is here, great. Says it inside.
Gary's not on mute, and he's trying to control his breathing so that you won't even hear him not breathing while he's not on mute. That's the whole incident that's going on.
Lamais, I think Gary and Yo are trying to do the same thing. That's my point here. Okay. But Gary, when I come back to Eretz Yisrael, I can't get you a Slurpee, but I'll bring you to Matok Za'anachnu, and they have like a Slurpee machine. I'll give you the red and the green together. Kol hakavod. Weiter. Zok the Gemara. Huh?
Muted you.
Why are they only wearing,
He really did mute me.
Eli, why are they only wearing tefillos and nothing else?
They're only wearing tchelas, Rabbi Yisai. These guys, I should have done like the guys that didn't make an Erev are not wearing tchelas. Whatever, I don't want to be like that. Zok the Gemara. Eisvei. Echad shaloi Erev, noiser rishusay lechad shirev. Case number 1, the guy that didn't make an Erev could be mevatel rishus, the guy that made an Erev. Shnayim shirevu, 2 green guys that made an Erev. Noiser rishuson leechad shaloi Erev. This is like a classic case. Ushnayim shloi irvu, 2 people that didn't make an Erev. Noiser rishuson leshnayim sheirvu. 2 reds could give it to 2 greens. Why? Because now it's considered they have 1 rishus. Oi, or the same case, lechad shelo Erev. 2 that didn't make an Erev, give it to a guy that didn't make an Erev. Avol! Here are the cases that don't work. Ein echad she'irev, noisen rishusoi lechad shelo Erev. Green cannot give it to red. Vein shnayim she'irvu, and 2 guys that made an Erev, 2 greens. They cannot give mevatel rishus to noisen rishus shnayim shelo Erev. 2 greens cannot do to 2 reds. Two reds cannot give the rishos mevad rishos to two reds. Ktani mias. Here's the raya. Echad shaloi irev. One guy that didn't make an eruv. Noiser rishusoi leechad sheirev. He could give his property over to the guy that made an eruv. Hechidami. What's the story? Ida lekachrina bahadei. If there's only one green guy, man eruv. Where's the eruv? Who made an eruv here? So of course there's another guy here, but he's not part of the story. Why? Because it's one guy that didn't make an eruv, gave over his rishus to one guy that did make an eruv. But he has another buddy here. And it says you could do an eruv to one out of the two. So why does Rabbi say you have to be mevatel to each and every person in the chatzar? Beautiful raya. V'rabo. So what's he going to say? And it seems like a doichak, but that's how he learns it. The havo mis. Yes, of course, he's masking to the right. It's great raya. There are two guys here, but one of them died on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Kitzer, no Yorshim, fine. Ayin Rashi. Either havo mis, emo seifa. So, but it has to line up with the rest of the Bryce over here. So let's say the Seifa. Green doesn't give to red. X. Now, why not? If there's another guy here, why can't they be mevatel? So Avada is there. So if over here he's alive, he didn't die yet. So over here also didn't die. Says the Gemara, Midiria, Hakadisa. No raya. One case. Over here, his partner died off according to Rabbah, and over here, his partner didn't die. What's the big? Why they don't have to match exactly? Teida, and I'll prove it to you. The Ktani Sefer the ratio. It says at the end of the ratio, Ushnaim shleirvu noisnim rushuson l'shnaim shirvu. This case, the second to last case, two guys that didn't make an eruv, give over the rishos to two guys that did make an eruv. Now, l'shnaimin lechad. It's mashma. The only way this works is if you have two reds giving to two greens. But what two reds and one green? It doesn't work. It doesn't mean this really. They gave it over to two exact greens. It means one out of the two. Listen to so then why is it now? It's a very deep question. So use the same language that you have in the ratio. In the ratio, the ratio. A guy that didn't make an eruv gave it to a guy that didn't make an eruv. And Abaye says there's two people here. Yet the lashon is that there's only one person. So all of a sudden in this case, why did he say there's two people? It doesn't match. Why in the first case it say one red to one green, and the second case it says two reds to two greens, when in fact, according to Abaye, it only means one out of the two greens. You're calling it two people, and in the ratio it's one person. It mamish doesn't go well. And it should continue on. Look at this case. The last case, it's two reds giving it to one red. It should say two reds or whatever, but they should match. It's one green and one red, not two greens and one red. Because Abaye holds it's not two people, it's one out of the two. And look at the ratio, it's one out of the two and it's called one. So anytime it's one out of the two, it should be called one. So why is it called two? Kasha, it's a very good kasha. I guess Rabbah at the end of the day has the upper hand sort of in his raya. Says the Gemara, Echad Shaloi Eirav. Now we're going to go through these cases one by one until the bottom of the page. Echad Shaloi Eirav, Noisim Rishus Echad Shirav. A guy that made an Eirav could be mevatel his Rishus to someone who didn't make an Eirav. La Abaye D'Isei. According to Abaye, we just said he has a partner. He's just not. He's not here.
The opposite, Ali.
Where am I? Oh, I said it wrong. Okay. Guy that didn't make an Eruv was mevatel rishos to a guy that did make an Eruv. The guy that did make an Eruv obviously has a partner, says Abaye. You can't make an Eruv by yourself. Vikom ashmalon the ain't tzorch levatel rishos lekol echad v'echad, and that's good for the chiddush that this guy that's being mevatel his rishos to the green guy, he doesn't have to do it to both. He can do it to one out of the two. L'Rabba, the havu miss. Rabbi has to say this first case, there was a second guy, but he's dead. That's why the case is talking about one person. On Shabbos he died. And we're not geyser maybe in a case, what about a regular case, nobody dies off, it shouldn't work just in case he doesn't die? No. Okay, next. Two people that made an Eruv, 2 greens. Could be mevatel the rishus to one guy that didn't make an Eruv. Pshita, that's the classic case. Before in our Mishnah, Mao the same Akivan Dolay Erev, Likna say, oh, this guy, he's being a Yotzim in a cloud, he's being different than everybody else. We should give him a little penalty. You shouldn't be able to be about the Rishus. Kamash Malon. Ushnaim Shlo Yirvu, Noisim Rishus, Shnaim Shirvu. 2 people that didn't make an Eruv could be mevatel. They're 2 Rishuyos to the 2 people that made an Eruv. L'Rabbit on a Seifa L'Galui Reisha. This is beautiful. Look, you see, we're talking about 2 people. La bayo shnayim. In other words, 2 people here, 2 people in the first case. La bayo shnayim shlo yirvu. It's richalei. I need this. Why? People are going to come and be mevatel to people that didn't make an eruv. Here, 2 people were mevatel to 2 people that did do an eruv. That's okay. Now these guys become a mandamar. They become somebody chashav. Look, they're able to be mevatel. Tomorrow, somebody's going to be mevatel to them. That we said already in the first thing we learned about today. You cannot be mevatel to 2 people that make an eruv. The oyster zelzeh. But they're look. They're mandamrim. They do stuff. They're able to be mevatel. So you think that you could be mevatel to them? No, it's a one direction thing only. And that's the chiddush. We're not concerned. This guy right over here. What's the chiddush here? You have some greens, you have some reds, gevaldik, whatever. Some people in the chotzer were ma'arev. But when no one in the picture, they're all red. No one in the picture is somebody that made an eruv. I would think that you should make a knas on that whole chotzer and say nobody could carry anything. Eruv, future generations. What about all the kinderlach in the chotzer? They'll never see an eruv in their life because everybody in the chotzer doesn't do eruvin, and everybody's mevatel every Shabbos. Kamash malon, we're not concerned. We're not koinus. Avalei nechod. Oh, and now we're going to the second part of the brayso. Avalei nechod she'erav noisim rishusay lechod shelo eruv. A guy that didn't make an eruv. A guy that made an eruv. Ein. Echod she'erav noisim rishusay. A guy that made an eruv, he cannot be mevatel rishus. Lechod shelo eruv. To a guy in red. La bayot on a sefer legulu yeresha. L'maisa, at the end of the day, you need 2 people to make an eruv. So how is there only one guy left? To teach you that we're not concerned, that we're not talking about the second guy. He's there somewhere, and only 1 out of the 2 is mevatel. And that's why it doesn't work. L'Rabba, either the Tani Reisha or Tani Nami Sefer. Rabba says, listen, it has to match, and it matches well. The Reish is talking about a guy that didn't make an eruv, giving to a guy that did make an eruv, and the Sefer is green to red. The Reish is red to green, and the Sefer is green to red. So it matches up nicely. And 2 people that made an eruv cannot be mevatel rishos to 2 people that didn't make an eruv. 2 greens cannot go to 2 reds. Hasulam ali. Why isn't this extra? What's the difference between here and here and here and there? Zok the Gemara. One of these guys gave it over to him. One of the guys that wasn't ma'arev gave it all over to the second one. Ma'al the same lister. I think it's okay. When these guys gave over to him, to both of them, they weren't able to.
You gotta wait faster, Eli.
What happened?
A few moments later.
All right. Zog the Gemara. Ve'ein shnayim she'yirvu noisim rishusan l'shnayim shelo yirvu. Shnayim she'yirvu. 2 guys in green cannot be mevatel rishus to 2 guys in red. Hasulam ali. Lo yitzricha de batal leichad minayu lechavrei. One of the reds, after they both received the rishus from the green, one of them gave it over to the other guy. Mal the same relay. It should be okay. Komash malon. Kivan. The be'inah the batal loy havelei shar yusuf b'chatzer loy. Since when these two guys gave over the rishus to these two guys, it wasn't okay. So what they do later on is it's too late. They never acquired the chatzeros. Vein shnayim shelo yirvu noisim shnayim shelo yirvu. Two reds cannot make two reds. Hasu lamali lo yitzricha. What's going on? One guy again is not muted. I'm not sure why. Hasu lamali. Says the Gemara Leitzricha, the Amri Kini al Manas La'aknois. The whole thing was that when they gave it over, they said on condition, we're only giving it to you on condition that you give it over. That also doesn't work. Brand new sugya, brand new part of the Zoom. We're turning to Daf Amud Beis in a second, sponsored by Mark Steinberg, Shidduch. For Yitzchok Pesach Yehuda ben Meir Yosef, and by Anonymous, Atzlocha, in Yiddishkeit, and Eschos for his family to be Torah Jews. It's the last day. Oh, changing of the guards. It should have been the new guy. That's the truth. But it's still Rosh Chodesh. Mark is not mevater for the last day. He's not mevater. Says the Gemara by Yomi Eruvin Rav Nachman, Yoresh Maushi Vatur Rishus. A guy inherited his father's property on Shabbos. Could he do bittul? Says the Gemara, Amud Beis on top. If he could have done the Eruv, it was his Erev Shabbos for a moment. So therefore, so of course he gave him a vatal. Oh, sorry. The Gemara just explained this first. In a situation where he could have, of course, he gave him a vatal. But here, in this case, it happened on Shabbos, and therefore he never had the opportunity ever to make an Eruv. So this individual is not in the parsha of Eruv. So maybe he can't relinquish his property. Or Dilma Yoresh carried the somebody that inherits his father is just taking the spot of his father. He's the leg of his father. He's instead of his father. And his father was able to do the Eruv. His father did the Eruv. He could do the bittul. He's like his father. Omar lei. This was Rava from Rav Nachman, the famous Rava Talmud of Rav Nachman. So says the Rebbe, Ani yoimim mevatel. Yeah, bro kara davua, that's the halacha. He could do bittul. V'hana devei Shmuel tanu ein mevatel. They have some sort of brisa I don't know about. They have a brisa that says you cannot be mevatel. Eisvei says as the Gemara, Rava asks the kasha of Rav Nachman zakla. Kol shemuter. We're just going to read it, and the Gemara is going to explain. Kol shemuter lemikzas Shabbos hutel kol Shabbos. If you have an eruv that worked for a short period of time, then it's good for the rest of the Shabbos. What's the case? Gemara is going to tell us the case. And if it was no good for even a short period of time as Shabbos comes in, Shabbos, you can't fix it. Besides in a case where it was usher in the beginning of Shabbos, but somebody gave up his rishus. What's the case? Here, for instance, you have two chatzeros, and they were counting on this opening between the two chatzeros, and on Shabbos, the opening closed. Something fell, and there's no longer a doorway between the two chatzeros. So now, what are you doing? So Rashi explains they throw from one chatzer. Now you could throw because in the beginning of Shabbos it was open. What happened later, we don't care. Erev der chaloin, they used a window, and the window got jammed shut. There was no opening. Anytime it says zaklal, it comes to include something else. One koira, one lechi. In other words, you have a mavui, and there's a leche in the side that allows you to carry the mavi, it fell down. Again, what's the big chiddush? The chiddush is because in this case, you no longer have mechitzos. The mechitzah that you had fell down. But in the first case, the mechitzos are there, so I cannot learn now from the first case. In a case where it's usher right away in the start of Shabbos, so the rest of Shabbos is also you can't fix it. Kegoin, shnei batim b'shnei tzidim rishus harabim v'kifum nochrim mechitza b'Shabbos. This case that we had the other day, two houses on two sides of rishus harabim come to goyim with a toolbox and they make a mechitza. So that doesn't work. I cannot be mevatel my rishus to the other person. Now, what if it was one person living next to rishus harabim and the goyim come and make a mechitza? That does work. Why? Because you can make a mechitza on Shabbos. Even Bein B'Shogeg, Bein B'Mezid, certainly if a goy makes it. But over here talking about bittul rishus, you cannot be mevatel rishus one to the other on Shabbos. Zakla la'asuyei mai. La'asuyei meis nochri b'Shabbos. If the guy dies on Shabbos, that's the case that we had earlier. Uktani. So, but this is the point that we want. Uktani. Chutz mevatel rishus. So what's the chiddush here? So Rashi says, it says, besides a case of bittul rishus, and it doesn't say v'yirish. Why does it say v'yirish? He doesn't like it so much. But we're going with Rashi. It should say, besides a case where somebody's mevatel rishus on Shabbos, and one more case, and a case of yirish. Doesn't say that. You see only a case of mevatel rishus, and not a case of yirish. So why are you telling me that a yirish has the right, like Rav Nachman says, to be mevatel rishus, he's like his father? You in? Yirish like. Says the Gemara, emachot mitoras bittul rishus. It's not talking about a person that was mevatel. The concept, the musug of bittul rishus, that includes a father, a son, whoever could be mevatel. Besides those cases that do work on Shabbos. Eisvei. We have a bunch of kashas going into tomorrow, so remember the idea here. Eisvei. Echad menei chatzer shemeis, v'niach rishusoi lechem min hashuk. You have somebody in the chatzer who dies, and in the will he gave over all his rishus, whatever, the rishus of that chatzer, to somebody that doesn't live there. Now the somebody that doesn't live there, he didn't make an eruv. The owner that made the eruv, he's no longer alive. If this happened, if he inherited the house before Shabbos, then it's no good. Why? Because he never made him eruv. So he ruins it for everybody. Why? Because since when Shabbos came in, it was a perfect eruv. The guy died within Shabbos, so it lasts for the rest of the Shabbos. That's what we just had in the Brisa. Ze'aklal. If it's mutter for mixes of Shabbos, it's mutter for the whole Shabbos. This guy was alive, mixes Shabbos. Now, there's a guy that doesn't live in the chutzner at all. And I didn't explain well. He has a part of this chutzner, but he doesn't live there. He lives somewhere else. And he dies, and he left it over to one of the people in the chutzner. Why? Because the guy that he gave it to that lives in the chutzner, he made an eruv, and everything that he owns is part of the eruv, so it's perfect. But if he died, so what do you see? According to you, that a yoresh has the right to be mevatel, how come he's not mevatel to everybody else? Says the Gemara, you're right, he could. All right, so we'll stop right here, Rabbi Isai. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we got with all the technical difficulties. Wow, the Yetzer Hara was working hard today. I forgot my phone at home. Had to run back last second. Started late. Gary would not unmute himself or mute himself. We had crazy internet. Okay, sorry. No, go ahead. Go with the Tehilim. I forgot it. Adonai.
אמא בנויס תשמור יא אדוני מי
Amen. Shmoy Adonai Yamo.
אמך שיכון למען תברך
Kimcha Sichol the Manti Bore.
כביסנה כבשה להשיב ולברוך אלתי
Visi Adonai Kizam Shmoy Chaldi.
תפשיל אדוני משומעים לבוקר שומעים לבוקר
Tafshil Adonai Shemim LaBoiker Shemim LaBoiker.
חרי של אדוני כי מנוי החסד והרבה מה יפדוס
Chayz Adonai Chesed V'Abem Fidu.
ואוהב תסיסה מכל הבן עשר
Uvides Somi Kol HaBen Yisrael Chilek V'Yisrael.
חיינו קודש השם ושם ושירם דיבר מיום ובמיר בשנה כמה חם להם וציון וצהל וחופר לו ושיב לגולה
Stop.
הזמן כבן אמר אמן
Amen. Yishkoyach. Ben Sino.